everyone. Day one, Stuck at Home Challenge. White card, audio levels. Hey gang, here we are. It is day one of the Stuck at Home Challenge. Now, if you're wondering what the heck is the Stuck at Home Challenge, you must have missed my video yesterday. Look, with all the crazy stuff that's going on in the world, people photographers like me, we should not be scheduling shoots, having people come into our studio, or for that matter, even going out on the street and interacting with people to do people photography. It's just not a wise thing to do, and if we follow the guidelines that are being set forth, not by our politicians, but by the CDC and the World Health Organization, those are the people we should be listening to, we need to not be scheduling shoots. So, it's important though, that we use this time to keep our skills as photographers sharp. It's also important that if you have extra downtime, which some of you do, for those of you that don't, thank you for your service and thank you for the work that you are doing while the rest of us are stuck at home. But if you have that time, use it. So for me, since I can't photograph people during this shutdown, I decided to pick a genre, and that genre is going to be abstracts. You know, taking everyday objects and photographing them in a unique, different, and interesting way. I've done some of this in the past years ago. In fact, I did it with iPhones, and it was a lot of fun. But now I'm going to use my Olympus cameras, the gear that I have set out today, and this is all that I'll work with as far as cameras. I've got my brand new, the OMD EM1 Mark III with the 12-100 f4, which, believe it or not, is actually a great macro lens of sorts. I'll explain. I've got the 30mm macro from Olympus. This is the f3.5, and I also have the 12-40 f2.8 Pro zoom, right? So that's gonna be my kit for today. I do, full disclosure, I'm in my bathroom, but I do have one additional light setup. It's an LED video light, just to kick a little bit of extra light up. No worries if you don't have lighting. It's okay to raise your ISO. I'll probably still have to raise my ISO a little bit above the base ISO. That's fine. Work with what you have available. If you've got lights at home and you want to practice with all kind of cool, crazy lights, well then do it. That's perfect. That's exactly what this is all about. But for me, when I do abstracts, the fun of it is taking an everyday object and finding a way to photograph it or a piece of it. Maybe it might be just a small detail, but to do it in a way that it is not immediately recognizable. And just like my fashion portraiture work that I do, I love to find things that have bold and bright colors. I always tell people I never really graduated kindergarten when it comes to color. I love primary colors, bright colors, kind of in your face color. So I decided that I would start in my bathroom because most people would not consider looking for interesting subjects in the bathroom. So why not? Let's do it a little bit different. So my first object that I'm gonna photograph, if you saw yesterday's video, I kind of tipped you off. It's right back there in the shower. It's a back scratcher that hangs on the wall of the shower. This thing is kind of cool. My wife likes it. It was part of her Christmas gift. She asked for it, right? It's got all these little kind of cool spines that are very flexible on the front end, and on the back, oh, look at that. Look at those cool textures with those suction cups. You can see even as I roll that past the camera, look at the possibilities that are there, right? And of course, the color. Now remember, I'm gonna go ahead and shoot this, and then I'm gonna do screen capture at the end of this video to show you how I decided to process it. When you're talking about abstracts, all bets are off. You can do anything you want. I may change the color. I may really change the contrast and make it extreme. There's any number of possibilities. I'm gonna do whatever floats my boat when the time comes, right? But that's the fun of doing abstracts. Taking everyday objects, creating interesting images that don't necessarily give away what the item is. So, one other set of props that I brought into the studio, and again, you don't have to have these exact things, But I guarantee that in your home, you've got something that you could do a similar idea. So you notice my bathroom is fairly light. It's got kind of beige colored tiles. There's a tub here. On a normal morning, if it was bright and sunny, I'd have nice window light or sunlight coming through that window. I'd lift the blind and maybe play with the sunlight. But as luck would have it, it's raining today. So it's really cloudy, it's really overcast, it's not that bright outside. So I'm working with what's in here. So instead of going all crazy with lighting, I'm gonna essentially work with this overall soft light and work with the colors and the textures. Now certainly something like this, we could spend a whole day, and I'm not exaggerating, a whole day just creating all kinds of different things. But the props that I am gonna use, I wanna be able to create some contrast. Since we've got all of this really just kind of beige and kind of tan coloring going on. So I brought two things out of my studio downstairs. One, you guys have seen these before. These are the white but black, so foam core, right? The Walmart reflectors, but these are the black versions. And also, here's a little pro tip for you. If you want a cheap way to figure out if you've got too much humidity in a room in your house, go to the dollar store, buy one of these. It could be black or white, and just let it sit for a couple of weeks in that room. If it curls like this one's curled, you see that curl? That means you got too much humidity. So this has been sitting in my garage. Obviously, a lot of humidity in the garage. So that's why it's curled, but for what I'm gonna do today, that's cool. And just in case they don't work out for me, I grabbed a little piece of black felt that I had downstairs. It's even got a hole poked in it. So we'll probably not use the hole, right? But it's got a hole in it. I don't know, either one of these two things will give me a darker background where I get some contrast, all right? So the first thing I'm gonna do here, let's go ahead and set one of these black boards. I'm gonna work here on this little edge on the tub. I'm gonna set these black boards up, or set a black board up, right on the edge, like so. Move those lenses out of the way. Just to give you a sense, because I talked about this idea that the 12 to 100 can actually be a great macro lens. Let me do just a quick grab shot here, and this way I can kind of get dialed in on what should my exposure be and all of that kind of stuff. So I'm gonna start out, I've got my camera at, let's see, we've got manual settings here. I'm gonna bring up my super control panel. Here we go, and right now we're at ISO 200. I'm gonna go up to ISO 400 right out of the box. I'm gonna leave my white balance on auto because I'm shooting raw, right? So it's not gonna be a super huge deal. I can deal with that when I get to post. But just to give you a sense of how close I can focus with this lens, I'm gonna do a couple quick frames here, just really quick, and I'll show you these. Cool, okay. So you see how close I am. I mean, I'm barely over a foot. I'm at about 14 inches or so. And keep in mind, it's a 100 millimeter. So for you full frame folks, a 12 to 100 on a micro four thirds, this is the equivalent of a 24 to 200 millimeter lens. Okay, so one of the things that I noticed while I was just taking those quick shots that I just showed you is this actually just looks really cool. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna play around here with just a couple of variations that are using the very front edge of the texture here. So what I'm doing is I'm focusing on these spines that are right in the front, and I'm letting everything kind of just fall off as we go. Now, the Olympus camera, this is again the OMV EM1 Mark III. This of course has focus stacking, focus bracketing. If I wanted to, I could go ahead and I could get major depth of focus in here. But not everybody has that feature, so I'm not going to use it today. I may show it off in one of the later videos, but for right now, I really want to work with very shallow depth of field with the idea of kind of isolating just a few of these spines. So again, still working with this 12 to 100 and just kind of really looking for some interesting spines that maybe are curled a little bit differently or doing something a little different than the rest, shall we say, okay? And then I'm gonna go with a wider view here. So right now I'm at about 25 millimeter on the zoom. I was almost all the way out at 100 millimeter. Now we're gonna go down to 25 millimeter and we're gonna go in really close just to get a different perspective. Come up on top of it a little bit more, good. Cool, now, all right, that being said, I'm curious what the back of this thing is gonna look like. So I'm just gonna flip it over. Most of my life, remember, is coming from up here. So in relationship to this little back scratcher thing, I'll take a shot to show you the shadows, but basically all the light's coming up from in that direction, okay? So again, we're gonna try really kind of the same type of setup here. And I'm gonna try again some horizontal and verticals. Right now, by the way, I'm shooting at about a 60th of a second, ISO 400, about a 60th of a second at f4. So I've got the lens wide open. It's giving me a very nice shallow depth of field. And I'm just really kind of looking at different lines that I can create with these different little suction cups that you're seeing. Okay, so now I want to go ahead, switch out the 12 to 100, and I'm going to put the macro lens on the camera. So again, this is a 30 millimeter lens. It's an f3.5, and part of the reason why I'm working with these slower lenses, so to speak, today is, you know, I want to drive home the point a little bit. Having like 1.8 lenses or 1.2 or 0.95 if you want a 7-pound lens, that's great, right? But you don't need lenses with apertures like that to be able to get shallow depth of field. So that's part of what I want to show you. When you see these shots, you're going to see I'm getting plenty of shallow depth of field, right? And so again, it's going to be like at f3.5. So now what I want to do is I want to get a sense of what is this going to give me with this macro lens. And oh my goodness, this is really cool because this is like serious close. So I'm going to open up just a little bit. So right now I'm at about a 30th of a second at f3.5 and getting some really neat texture. Okay, I'm going to come in actually a little bit lower. So I'm going to go ahead and use my flippy screen. Yes, that is the technical term. Now, you guys know that I'm not a big fan of shooting off the LCD. The simple reason being, viewfinders exist to make sure that you're isolating what you see with your eyes. But obviously, having the flippy screen, it's a great feature for situations where you can't get your head where you want it to be in relationship to the viewfinder. So in this case, I want to come in really, really close on the edge of these things and see what I can get. And now, right now, from this angle where you see the camera, I'm actually getting some of the white and the beige in the background because obviously I'm not angling the camera down, so I'm getting that, and it's kind of interesting. So I'm going to play with that for a few frames. I'm going to get the camera super low where I can kind of isolate just, you know, a couple of these little spines here. Bring my focus spot up just a tad higher. Let's flip this over again. I'll be honest, I thought for sure coming into this that this picture was going to be all about the macro lens. I really did. I'm actually not digging the macro lens as much. I'm finding it to be a little bit limiting in terms of what I'm able to see and grab here. So let's play a little bit more. Interestingly enough, let's try a shot down here on the bottom. So I'm going to have to really open up for this because this is kind of dark, but it's kind of looking cool the way these little spines are lining up underneath. It's almost like one of those shots that you see of the forest where it's got the white trees and all that kind of stuff. And honestly, what I'm thinking of doing here, just for the heck of it, is, ooh, yeah. So if I move the camera, let me put that flippy screen back. That's kind of cool. So now I'm going to stop my lens down a little bit. So just to give you a sense, those were half-second exposures at f4. So I'm going to go to f5 and I'm going to go to full 1-second exposures now. All right. Oh yeah, that's cool. So I'm waiting through part of the exposure, maybe half, obviously I don't know exactly, but about half before I start moving the camera. Let's try this again. Interesting. One more. That's kind of cool. Let's try a different one. All right, and again. Cool. Okay. Now that I'm seeing that and I'm doing the camera motion, that makes me think of another technique that I've done years ago. This was a cool thing when I was a kid, because when I was a kid, zoom lenses first came out. So let's go ahead and switch. I'm actually going to put that 12 to 100 back on. And just so that I can keep the lens low to the table, I am going to take the lens hood off so that I can set it down right there. So what I want to try and do is a zoom effect where I'm actually zooming the lens during the shot. Here we go. Yeah, it's interesting. I'll show you one. I can tell you right now, this is not one that I'm going to use, but we'll try it, right? So here we go. Okay, and we'll go again. Yeah, not bad, not great, but not bad. All right, I've got one lens left to play with, the three that I brought out here. I want to put the 12 to 40 on. So again, this is a 2.8. This is one of the Pro Zooms from Olympus. It is, I'm going to leave the hood off just to make things easier. This is one of the lenses, of course, since it's a Pro, it's weather sealed. I can get it wet. I don't think we need to use any water today, but that's certainly an option. So the first thing that I don't know about this lens, which I probably should, but I don't know how close it will focus. So I'm going to kind of reset my exposure here, like 40th at 2.8, but I want to see like how close am I able to get this thing to focus. So if I'm zoomed all the way to 40, which by the way, remember, double it. So for you full frame folks, that's an 80 millimeter equivalent. So 24 to 40 is what we're talking about. If I zoom all the way to 40, I can get things in focus like right there. So that's pretty cool, okay? If I have it all the way out at 12, which is the 24 equivalent, I can get things in focus like right there. So what I'm actually going to do now, I'm kind of digging this view. I want to do a couple of things. I want to get a little more depth of field. So I want to stop my lens down to f5, which means I'm going to have to go to about a 15th of a second. And I'm going to drop my focus point way down to the bottom of the frame and try a couple shots here really quick. Good. Try a slightly lower angle. Ooh, I'm kind of digging that. That's kind of neat. Bring that focus point up just a tad higher. Cool. And then one of the other things I was thinking of when I was looking at this thing in the shower is, what do I get if I play, oh yeah. So I'm gonna curl it and kind of shoot in from the side here and do some kind of selective focus on different different spines. I want to take a quick peek. Nice, all right, cool. So, and again, this is one of the great things about working with mirrorless cameras is, you know, what you see is what you get. The image that I'm seeing on my LCD, you know, it's the finished image, okay? Cool. So let's try a similar thing here. Good. I want to zoom in a little bit more again. Cool. All right. So this is my back scratch.
Okay, so I'm back in my office. I've got everything downloaded onto the computer. I'm viewing it right now in Adobe Bridge. I shot a total of 226 frames, and if I scroll through here really quick, you can get a sense of kind of some of the different camera angles, exposure variances, that kind of stuff. I am going to go through here and narrow this down to the images that I like the most. Remember, I'm looking for one frame. So I'm going to speed this part up while it happens, but I'll let you see what I've narrowed it down to when we get done. Okay, so I've got it narrowed down to 38 images. So the first thing that I'm gonna do for my workflow, I'm gonna select all of them. I'm gonna do batch rename, and we're gonna call this Stuck at Home, and it's going to add the date and a unique 4-digit number to each of them. So now I know which images, you'll see them change. There we go. So Stuck at Home 031720 underscore, and then a 4-digit number that is unique to each file. All the rest of the images that I shot, I will delete. I have no use for them. This is my normal workflow. After I go through that first pass of edits, the rest go away. So now my challenge is narrowing it down to the one, or I have a feeling I may cheat and do just a couple here, but you know, the goal is get one, right? So the first thing I'm actually gonna do before I go any further, since I've only got 38 images and my computer is powerful enough to be able to handle this, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna open all 38 of them up in Photoshop, actually Camera Raw. So Photoshop's gonna launch, you can see that happening on the screen. There we go. So now we have the Camera Raw plugin up on the screen. I'm gonna select all the images and I'm gonna dial in a few of my basic presets. So I'm gonna start at the bottom of the basic panel here. I add 30 to everything. For these images, I'm gonna go ahead and add 30 vibrance. I'm gonna add 4 of saturation. I am gonna do about a 15 on clarity because I want the texture and the detail out of all of these. I am gonna switch over to the sharpening panel. I'm gonna pop that to 60. It starts in defaults for Olympus cameras and Olympus files at 40. Then I'm gonna go over here to lens correction, remove chromatic aberration, enable profile corrections. Then I am going to select done. What that has done for me is just applied some of my basic processing to my files. I'm gonna come back here into Bridge now. You'll notice all the little icons are showing up to indicate that there has been some processing done to the file that I am currently looking at. So for now, I'm gonna go ahead and as I go through these, just to give you my first impressions and where my head's at, I was actually originally kind of excited by the suction cups. I would have to give myself a failing grade on the suction cups. You'll notice I only pulled out 3 frames and I think I could make something interesting out of these horizontal ones here, but ultimately, bored. They just didn't do it for me. I'm still really digging the spines and all of the stuff that's going on here with the spines. This is one of the zoom shots that I did, which I actually really like this. I like the purity of it. I like kind of the confusion and the chaos of it. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna hit a 5 on this one right out of the box because that's one that I'm gonna process that one. We're gonna do something with that. I'm also really liking the lighter blue color, which is not the actual color of the item. But as you see here in these, this color is giving me ideas for how I'm gonna process the images. I definitely love that blue compared to the green. So believe me, I'll be playing with my colors a little bit. As I go through these 4 right here, I find this one interesting. I wish that the front row wasn't blurry. I like here that the front row is sharp, but I'll admit I kind of like the fact that I've got the waviness of these here, and this one's a little bit more of an angle, so I'm really kind of digging that. I'm gonna mark that one for a possible finished shot. The more that I'm looking at these guys up top here, I'm not really that excited by them. So we're gonna skip out on them there. As I come into these here, I will admit I find this one kind of interesting, so I'm gonna hit a 5 on that for now, just as a reference. And then what I liked about this group of 5 images that comes up here, or 6 images, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I like the idea how the little spines are kind of, emanating outward. Obviously, these were done with the wide angle lens. Specifically, here, we'll grab this one. If I look at file info, bring that onto the screen here. That was done with the 12 to 40, and this is at 12 millimeters. So this is, kind of at the widest setting. I just think there's something interesting about the way that the shapes and the colors kind of all spread out. And I'm kind of digging what I'm seeing here on this one. So that one's going to get the mark for me. These are the ones where I folded it over just to get kind of the interesting edges on the spines. So we got 4 of them there. Out of the 4, these 2 are interesting, but notice the tips aren't as bright. And when I get to here, because I changed my focus point, the tips really brightened up. So I'm kind of digging this one right here. So that one's gonna get the mark. Now I've got 7 of them that are these kind of interesting shots of just the tips, like, you know, reflecting light. That to me, there's something about these 2 that I just really like. I'm gonna go with that one there. And while I'm doing that, I remember there's this down at the bottom. So first thing, this shot here needs to be rotated. There we go. And indeed, I like this better. And then I've got these, I'm also gonna rotate this one, so it's like the other's good. I've got these 5 right here, which have really interesting lines. And for me, I'm a little bit torn. I find this one here interesting. This is probably the closer of them. I love the way that this trails off into the back, and there's a little bit of detail back there. That the focus point is in here. I kind of really like that, the close-up. So I'm actually gonna mark 2 here. That one and that one. But I want to compare these 2 just to make sure. See, now the more that I'm looking at this now, I'm actually finding number 33, this top one, to be more interesting. So I'm going to do that one, and I'm going to take that out. Now I'm down to 8 images. So we're getting there, right? So the first, right out of the box, we can look at these 2 and we can kind of decide, all right, what do we want to do with these here? Let me change this to make those a little bit bigger. Definitely for me, the one that is more blue is doing the job here. So we're gonna go ahead, we're just gonna knock that back to a 4. I still wanna keep that blurry one in. Now that I'm looking at the whole selection, you know, this one's not doing that much for me, but we'll leave it in. So really where I have to make my choices, it's with these 2. It's which one am I gonna take here? I think for me, it's funny, when I downloaded the files, this file was like screaming at me. Like, I love it. The more I'm looking at it, I've got to go with 33. I just think it's ultimately more interesting. So I'm gonna knock 34 down. So that gets me down to 6 files, right? So let's make these a little bit smaller so that you can see them all in here. There we go. Now the challenge is, what do we want to make the one file, right? I'd be curious to know your thoughts in the comments afterwards, but for me, I think the one that is going to be the one that I am going to work on right now, it's going to be number 33, which is not one of my original picks. So I'm going to add that one in there. That's going to be the one that I start with. Okay, so here are the 5 images that didn't make the cut, but I'm still going to go ahead and process them. I've already got the initial settings dialed in that I showed you, the 15 on clarity, the 30 on vibrance, the 4 on saturation. So now I'm going to go ahead and try a couple things here. Just wanted to see what the auto will do, but what I imagine happening here is I'm going to really kind of juice the colors, bring the highlights up, and I'm going to pull the blacks down to really kind of make them pop. I'm actually kind of really digging that. A little bit later there, drag that down, even pull the dehaze up, boom. So that's got kind of a really nice pop to it right now. This one, this one doesn't need a whole lot. We're gonna bring the blacks down like that, and I'm gonna leave it really pretty, just kind of like sci-fi-ish and eerie, and really with no idea what's happening. If I pull the dehaze up, well, that's interesting, but that's kind of extreme. So we're just gonna leave that right down there at 0. And that one's done. I'm really happy with that. This one, first thing I want to do, I want to get that color temperature so it's blue, right? And then I think dehaze is going to give me what I'm after, and it is. And then I'm going to bring those blacks way down and just really kind of jack the contrast on this without using contrast. You notice, by the way, I increase and decrease contrast a lot, but I don't use the contrast slider. The contrast slider, it's kind of mandatory. It does like everything, right? I want to be able to manage it. So when I'm dealing with contrast, I'm usually working with highlights and shadows and whites and blacks, not the contrast slider. So this one, definitely we got some, it's kind of like, again, okay, but not the greatest color in the world if I really, really kind of hit that dehaze and play with that. But what's interesting here is I've got some orange going on from the texture in the background, or not from the texture, from that matte board that's in the background, the foam core. So I'm gonna play with that a little bit and see if I can't bring that up, make it a little bit more interesting. And then this one again, we're gonna go back, and I'm really liking those blues. I'm gonna hit that dehaze. Oh yeah, so that like totally works for me. Bring the highlights just a tad higher, pull the blacks down a little bit more. So now, composition. What are we gonna do with these for cropping? So you guys know that I tend to do almost everything, in video format because my images are gonna go into a video, right? I think I'm actually gonna stick with that with these images. And I'm gonna go through here, do the crops. I won't lie, this one's kind of not working that way. So let's just kind of pick what we need here for it. I'm kind of digging that with the diagonal going through. Yeah, unfortunately, this is one, the more that I play with it, the less I like it, I won't lie. This one, totally, I want this to be a video format, 16:9. We're gonna come in down here, lift that up a little bit more. And I am gonna go into Photoshop with this one and add one more little piece to it. Same thing here for sure. This one needs to be 16:9. I'm gonna put it a little high in the frame, like so. For this one, we're gonna do kind of the same idea here. Let's see. And I'm thinking, actually I really like the narrow view. So now, let me hit done. And two of them I wanna bring into Photoshop and play with. We're still gonna save that last one to do the work on since that's the one that I originally picked. But this one, and you know what, even this one, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna open them into Photoshop. So they're gonna come up in Camera Raw again. We'll do open images. What I wanna be able to do here is kind of a little bit of selective lighting, if you will. So for this one, I have a little action recorded that's going to give me a soft light layer. So all I have to do is hit F2, and you see it show up here over on the right in my layers panel. But just so you know what it is that I'm actually doing, it's the equivalent of layer, new, layer. Then it brings up the dialog box that you see here, and in mode, you're gonna click soft light and fill it with soft light, neutral gray, 50% gray, or excuse me, neutral color, 50% gray. Hit OK, and you can see it's a gray panel. Now, I'm gonna use the gradient tool, and it's set to go from black to clear, okay? And at about 40% or so, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna use it to do some selective burning to darken areas of the image, which is gonna bring my focus back a little bit more into the center where I really want it to be. And then that image is working a little bit better for me, in that sense. Let me go ahead and make a folder here for PSDs, and we'll save that one. There we go. And then on this one here, same thing. I'm gonna use that little shortcut that I have, and I'm gonna use the gradient. That's it. Again, I wanna really get those really white tips in the center to really stick out. In fact, I'm gonna pull that opacity up even higher. Really get aggressive with this now. That's it. There we go. And those edges, bring those corners down a little bit more. See, the reason I like to do vignettes like this instead of, the usual circles, because it looks like a circle vignette when you do that, right? Which is kind of like boring. So for me, this just makes it a little bit more interesting. Now it's also worth noting, I'm gonna put just a clear adjustment layer on here. I noticed there's a tiny little piece of lint down here, and also two little pieces of highlights that were probably water that wasn't quite dry. So I'm gonna use the healing brush and just go ahead and take those out real quick. Get rid of those two little spots. That one there as well. Boom. So we're good to go with those. Actually, there's two more over there. They're not as bright, but they're there. Again, that one works for me there. I'm gonna go ahead and hit save. Put that in the, whoops, where's the PSD folder? There it is, put it in right there. And then this one, let's see here. For this, I'm also gonna do my soft light layer. I just wanna burn down that top. That's it. And then especially burn down the bottom down here. There we go. So it really kind of isolates that space. There it is. So that one's done. All right, so now I am ready Let me close all three of those. Let's go back to Bridge. I am ready to work on the image that was my selection. So for sure, I want this to be blue, right? I mean, that's hands down, but there's two ways I could get there. Let's leave it an as shot for right now. If I go over to hue, saturation, and luminance and play with the aquas, let's see what that gives me. So that gives me kind of a really blah looking blue, doesn't it? And the greens, the green's interesting, but I'm gonna go back to that develop panel where we started. I'm gonna pull the color temperature way up. And now what I wanna do again is I wanna play with the highlights and the blacks and really, really, really make this thing pop. And this, again, for me, guys, this is the kind of stuff where, you know, we're talking like extreme, intense color, right? So this is the kind of thing that, for me, I really like to do. It doesn't have to be your thing, and that's okay. Yeah, definitely the way that I would approach this, for sure. And then, from a composition standpoint, what are we gonna do here? I am gonna go with, so I'm gonna leave that a little high, right about there. I'm gonna open this in Photoshop, similar to the others. I'm gonna put my gray layer on top and use the gradients. And I'm gonna really, really force your eye to look at specific parts of the image by darkening other pieces. And that's gonna be my shot. So there it is. You have got your finished image. All right, so here we are back in Lightroom, and here I'll make these a little bit bigger on the screen for you just so you can catch them all. These are the finished images that I came up with day one of the Stuck at Home Photography Challenge.
Okay, gang, day one of the Stuck at Home Photography Challenge. There you have it, a back scratcher. I'm not gonna win any awards for those photos, and that's not what it's about. It's about stepping outside of your box, trying some different things, and practicing. Most importantly, following your passion, enjoying your cameras, and actually using them. Plus, with everything that's going on, it's a great escape. So make sure you join my Facebook group. The link, it's in the description below the video. Post your images from the Stuck at Home Photography Challenge in the group. Follow the rules. There's a lot of information that you have to post, but it's worth it because when this is all said and done, we're gonna have some prizes. I can't wait to see what you come up with. So check back tomorrow and I'll show you my day two of the Stuck at Home Photography Challenge. In the meantime, you know the drill. Go pick up your camera and shoot something because your best shot, it's your next shot. Adios.